Hi everyone, Peter here from Hard Knot Garage. That's me wearing all my safety gear. When you're cutting up diecast like this, it's going to be really noisy. You're going to have lots of bits of metal flying everywhere, and it's going to get really hot and lots of dust and stuff. So definitely recommend eye protection, ear protection, a mask, and you can see here I'm wearing some leather gloves just to watch the heat because they do get very hot. So I'm using my Dremel here. Unfortunately, shortly after this I actually killed it and I had to go and replace it after 20 odd years. So what I've done, I'm cutting basically a circle or half circle out of the wheel well to fit bigger wheels in. What I've done initially is obviously marked it, and then I've done some vertical cuts into the circle, and then I'm going to do some side cuts to take those bits out, and then to tidy it up I'm going to grind it using the grinding blade. I could have done that from the start, but I prefer to take out the sort of bigger chunks if I can first. What I'm doing here is diecast can be bent and snapped. So I'm just using my pliers just to pull off some of those bigger chunks, and then I can get in with the grinder and pull those out. Okay, so here I'm just changing over to my grinding blade, and then I'm going to start ripping into it. You can see all of the metal bits and pieces flying around, coming up into the camera as well. So that's why it is really important just to have that eye protection. I've had blades come off the cutting discs and actually embed themselves in my goggles, so definitely worth it. You want to be in it for the long game, so it pays to look after yourself. This is also where the metal can get really quite hot. Now you noticed I haven't sanded this model or stripped it. I tend not to paint strip models anymore. You can usually just sand them for what I'm doing. But if for some reason you wanted to protect the paint, doing this kind of work can cause the metal to heat up, and then the paint will bubble. So if you're trying to protect the paint, just keep in mind that sort of heat management of not getting them too hot. It's also important that you have removed all the plastic parts, because again the heat will cause the plastic parts to melt. So this part, I'm switching back to a cutting blade, and I'm going to cut the plastic. I need to cut the wheel wells out. Generally, when cutting plastic, if you're using a Dremel like this, you want to use it on a lower speed, and you can get some different blades for them as well that are better suited to plastic. So now I'm going to move into sanding, and I mentioned before that generally I don't strip models anymore. I usually just sand the paint down and paint over them. Lots of different people have different techniques. This one works for me. Generally I'm doing kind of, rat rod or patina cars, so it works quite well. So I've got some sanding pads here. The top of this model, so the roof is plastic, and the rest is die cast. So I'm using pretty much the same technique on both. I'll use a bit of a rough one to get started, and then a finer one after that. What I'm really trying to do here is not take the paint off. What I'm just trying to do is rough it up. You can basically use it as a base coat for the next layer that goes on. So I just need it rough. You know, for this particular one, it's going to be like a rat rod, you know, ratty kind of van. So if I go a little bit further on some bits and not so much on others, that's okay. You may want to go through to bare metal if you can do a bit of patina and kind of rust up some of the metal. Yeah, so generally just get stuck into it, have a bit of fun, play around with some different sanding patterns, and yeah, then you're done. So this is basically the effect I'm looking for. Carved out the back, sanded it up. So now I'm going to paint it. This is just using VW surface primer, the red brown, just with my airbrush. Went over. It's quite a nice effect for doing these kind of builds because you get that uneven pattern. So that's pretty much what I've gone with.